Good morning. This is my second attempt at this video. I recorded the first one and it was my initial brew and I wasn't super happy with how often I lost my train of thought. So I'm going to be doing this again. This morning I am making some Gyokuro. This is Japanese green tea. It's very high grade Japanese green tea and it's quite good. It's probably my favorite tea. I drink it uh, depending on my mood. I mean, in the springtime when I'm really in the mood for something like grassy and green and bright and uplifting, I will drink it, damn near every day. Uh, Lately, I've been having it more like, I don't know, once or twice a week. Um, but this is my setup for this. You can see I'm not doing it Gong Fu style this time. I'm using a pot. Uh, so I have here some roughly 50-degree water. Maybe it's a little cooler. Um, 50 degrees Celsius. I will say that as much as I like this kettle, and this kettle comes very highly recommended, especially by like coffee drinkers, um, the gradations of Celsius going from 32 to 43 to 54 to 66, rather than just 10, 20, 30, 40, is real dumb. I don't like it. It's the one major downside of this kettle. Also, I got this is the stovetop version. It was a little cheaper. Um, I found out later that they do have a like one that comes with a heating element. I really wish I'd gotten that one because it would be nice it's nice for gong fu sessions to be able to keep the water at the table and keep it hot. Having to run back to the stove all the time kind of sucks, but it's not that big of a deal. Anyway, that's my review of the fellow kettle. I forget what this one's called. So you can see here, I've already brewed one pot and drank it. This is the wet leaf, which is, you can see already, is quite green. It is very. It looks like it just came off the bush. Um, this is after about 2 minutes of brewing. It's been brewed once. I typically don't rinse green teas. This one I do, and the reason I do that is because these leaves, when they come, I got a little bit of dry leaf here to show you. You can see how tightly wrapped they are. Uh, they're very, very small. They're basically needles. The reason for that is that when this tea is processed, it's rolled, it's machine rolled. Japanese green teas almost are entirely machine processed, except for there are exceptions, but I would say like virtually anything you'd find in the States that's not some kind of special order thing is going to be a machine processed tea. So they come in tiny little needles, and then once you brood them, they really open up like this. This looks like twice as much tea as I actually put in there. But now we're going to move on to the brewing. So what I'm going to do is pour my water. This is not the best Kyushu, but it does work. It's nice and flat, which I like in comparison to some others. I'm going to give this 2 minutes. I also really like this little thumb handle here. I think that's really what appealed to me when I bought this Kyushu. Um, you can get really geeky about these things. This is like a specifically Japanese thing. This side handle pot. Um, it's considered aesthetically pleasing to use as little motion as possible when pouring. This allows for that because you just barely have to turn it, and just it will just shoot out of there. Um, I will discuss my technique once I get to that point. Um, and this I'm using my matcha bowl because I just like using my matcha bowl. This thing is beautiful. In fact, here you can see this. It's got a very nice glaze on it. It looks like, it looks like ice. Like it's crystalline. It's very nice. Um, I don't know what this kind of glaze is called. Typically, you don't see a lot of matcha bowls that are actually round, like perfectly round like this. A lot of them are more rough. I do plan to do a video on matcha. Maybe even tomorrow. I don't know. Um, my matcha brewing technique is not perfect, but I do feel like I'm getting closer every day. Um, it'll be difficult to do it one-handed. I don't have any kind of stand or anything for my phone. I'm just holding it. But let's see. I think we've got about 30 more seconds on this brew. I run almost all my teas through filters just because I don't really like to have all these little chunks in my tea. Some people do like that. It's really a preference. It's going to taste a little stronger if you leave these in. I filter them out. This strainer works very well for this. So it's been about 2 minutes. So with a Kyushu, this is how I do it when I pour. I usually will do kind of one long pour. And then once I've gotten some of the liquid out, I will start to tilt back. And kind of do it like this. I have found that doing it this way, because when you're pouring, all those leaves are just free floating in here. It's not like other pots where there's usually a strainer inside of it. These leaves are just in there. So what happens is when you pour, they tend to clump around the spigot, and they don't really, they kind of create a barrier that prevents the tea. It sort of filters out the tea as it pours out. And if you really want to get all that green flavor, you have to make room for the tea to get out of the pot. And I really, especially with these greens, especially with a delicate green like this, I try not to leave any water in the pot whatsoever if I can avoid it. The reason being that it will continue to brew for as long as the water's in there. And I don't want to accidentally extract more than I intend to and affect the flavor of my next pot. Because the longer that water is in there, the more it will start to pull out the more bitter notes. And since this is a Japanese green tea, and Japanese green teas tend to really emphasize the sweetness and the grassiness and the umami flavors over the more bitter, high, bright notes that you'd find in like a Chinese green tea. And speaking of Chinese green teas, you've probably had some before where they don't really look like this one does. Now this is a blue bowl, so it's a little bit misleading. I think it's a little darker than it really is, but you can see this is just straight up green. Most Japanese green teas will be a lot more green. This one in particular is the greenest tea you can find, outside of matcha, which is just hyper concentrated green powder. A Chinese green tea typically will be yellow to brownish with maybe slightly green, but they're not like this green. You can see how much it's pretty thick too. This comes out quite thick. This is I think I said this is like my favorite tea. So if you really value green seaweed type flavors, like if you're a big sushi fan, this is probably the tea for you. Some people find it a little overwhelming, and it can be very overwhelming, especially if you drink it on an empty stomach. There's a lot of the compounds in green tea tend to be stimulatory to the gut. So if you have nothing in your stomach, you're going to get, once you drink it, you may feel nauseous. I felt that, especially if you drink it very quickly. But it's quite good. It tastes amazing. It's a different experience to a Chinese green tea, especially because it's brewed so cool. I mean, 130 degrees Fahrenheit is barely lukewarm as far as tea is concerned. It's not even halfway to boiling. So you're going to extract some very different flavor profiles out of it. Mostly, the rule generally, as I understand it, is that the higher temperatures you go, the more bitterness you're going to extract, the more catechins and tannins. I'm not sure which one is responsible for what, but those are some tea chemical terms that are beyond me at the moment. But this one, because you're trying to emphasize these lower temperature flavors, you're going to get a very different profile. And you can brew this tea hotter if you're into that more bitter, bright flavor, if that's what you want. You can brew this tea hotter, and this tea is amazing also at higher temperatures. I wouldn't go above, maybe like, this one has a helpful color chart. I wouldn't go above like 80 Celsius or 180 Fahrenheit, 175. anything for green teas, I think anything above that is going to be a little too much. You're going to get a little too much bitterness, and that's going to overwhelm the entire rest of the flavor profile that you're going to get out of this tea, and probably any other green tea. Usually for like a sencha, or I drink a lot of genmai cha, which is brown rice tea. I will brew those much higher temperature. Those will be those would be about 170 for me. This one I was there's a channel called Mayleaf on YouTube, Meileaf. He's a British tea seller, and he has a video on Gyokuro, and that's where I learned about brewing this at cooler temperatures. I had been brewing it basically like a sencha for a long time, and while I really liked it, he said you may really enjoy that tea. Try it this way, and I've been doing it this way ever since. So if you get the chance to try this, Gyokuro tends to be on the higher end, especially in the United States. I paid about, for this particular one, I paid about I think it's like $9.95 an ounce, something like that. So it's quite pricey, but if you like your greens like I do, especially if you like your Japanese greens like I do, it's very worth it. The only caveat really is that green teas do not have the shelf life of a pu'er or a black tea that's already oxidized, or even oolong. Aside from like white teas that are super delicate, these tend to lose a lot of their luster pretty quickly. So you need to be able to drink it in a reasonable amount of time. I drink quite a bit of it for that reason. My feeling is that if I'm going to enjoy a tea like this, I want to enjoy it frequently. So, but anyway, I'm going to enjoy it now. So thank you for watching. If you have any questions, let me know. I will try to answer them. I'm not an expert. I'm trying to become an expert, but I just enjoy talking about tea, especially this one. This is nectar as far as I'm concerned. So anyway, thank you.